Are China and Taiwan heading for an all-out war? Dan Perry, your thoughts on that? An all-out war?
I mean, an all-out war will happen if China decides to launch a war. It's not like Taiwan is going to attack China. And it may be true that China can be compelled to do that by U.S. action or a change in U.S. policy, but I don't see a change in U.S. policy coming. So it really does amount to China deciding whether China wishes to invade Taiwan.
I want to open up the floor by asking an even bigger question, if I may. Is Taiwan militarily capable of actually engaging in a war with China? And Dan Perry, let's go back to you.
Well, China has the largest army in the world with about 2 million active soldiers, and Taiwan is nowhere even close. So obviously, no, Taiwan cannot compete. Taiwan's one advantage is that China would have to basically invade by sea from 100 kilometers away. Its fleet would be exposed. It would be complicated logistically. There's few good landing spots, and in the western bit of Taiwan, where they would land, they would be fired at from tall buildings and attacked from the mountainous core of the island. It would be very, very messy. Of course, a truly emboldened China could bomb Taiwan into submission if they don't care about being a pariah. And I mean, a lot of that depends on whether they feel that they can afford such a thing.
I think the most likely result of a total sea battle between the United States and Taiwan with American intervention would be the annihilation of the U.S. fleet and the annihilation of American bases in Okinawa and Guam, leading most probably to a nuclear exchange between China and the United States.
Right.
I'm not so sure it's so likely that the U.S. would actually necessarily engage that way. I mean, you're giving the U.S. a lot more credit than I think a lot of people do. I mean, will the U.S. really, really fight for Taiwan? I wouldn't be at all surprised if other scenarios would result, including, by the way, I mean, if someone like Trump were in power in the U.S., I wouldn't be surprised to see the U.S. do nothing.
That's certainly possible, in which case the United States ceases to be a power in the Western Pacific and China becomes the dominant power. Whether the United States would accept that, I do not know. If no one does anything, if there's no change in the one China policy and no fundamental change in Taiwanese armaments, then I think all sides will agree to kick the can down the road.
My sense is there is a notion that China, perhaps emboldened by what's happening in Ukraine, or in any case, being more aggressive in the last 5 to 10 years under Xi, might change its position vis-a-vis Taiwan, even if there's no change in U.S. policy. And I guess jumping ahead, I would suggest that the most likely U.S. response would be either inaction in a Trump-like context or some kind of economic warfare with China. I mean, this apocalyptic scenario that you're talking about here of direct U.S.-China fighting that will, A, you're right, probably lead to a U.S. defeat, in the arena itself, and B, potentially embroil everyone in nuclear confrontation is, it's almost too horrifying to contemplate, frankly.
Right, and gentlemen, if I may, it seems like there's almost a bigger picture at play here. We're talking about an American response, how China and Taiwan's militaries will sort of interact here, but it's always been the big question of the Taiwan issue is it a sovereign state or is it actually a renegade and breakaway province of China?
Borders move around all the time in the world, usually as a function of force. And it's impossible to say what really belongs to who. I mean, China has a certain claim to Taiwan because it's a bunch of islands close by to the Chinese coast, and it's an enormous empire. I get that, and they have their quibbles about the rights of empire and their potentially paranoid feelings about what's going to make them unstable. But at the end of the day, it looks like two different countries to me. They have two completely different territorial entities. They have the people are slightly different. There's an indigenous proportion of the people in Taiwan, and histories are different. Taiwan at different times was ruled by the Japanese, by various colonial powers, sure, by waves of Chinese invaders as well. And mainly they have two radically different government systems and people in Taiwan who manifestly want no part of mainland China. You have this complication that Taiwan itself doesn't really declare independence because they feel like they're representing all of China. And therefore, the one China policy is something that awkwardly can be clung to by the various global powers, all of whom kind of wish this goes away and are trying to offend neither side. But realistically, Taiwan is distinct from China at present. And if China wanted to invade it, that would be a pretty big global cataclysm.
The good news here is that Taiwan has the lowest birth rate of any country in the world except South Korea. And at its current birth rate, it will lose 60% of its population in the course of the present century. And every worker will be supporting every 100 workers will be supporting 130 retirees. So demographically, Taiwan will disappear starting about mid-century. It will only survive on the basis of immigrants from the mainland. And if we simply kick the can down the road and keep up the fiction of the one China policy, the problem will literally wither away. So that's the best.
Are you suggesting, for lack of a labor force, the Taiwanese will go hat in hand to mainland China and ask to become part of a communist dictatorship?
Or the biggest, I should say, war that comes to mind in terms of a military invasion right now is Russia's invasion in Ukraine. The big question really is here, is China watching this closely and possibly looking to imitate it in Taiwan? Gentlemen, another 30-second lightning round, and I'd like to give the floor first to Dan Perry.
Well, I think China, that, as my colleagues say, finds itself above the Westphalian system even, which forms the organizing principle of the rest of the globe, may feel it's above taking a cue from Putin. But I have to think that China's leaders are looking very closely to see if Putin can walk away from his Ukraine misadventure with the sense of having gotten away with something. And if the answer is yes, then that may embolden them even further vis-a-vis Taiwan.
The United States has domestic issues to worry about. It's also got foreign policy issues in terms of Ukraine as well as Iran to deal with. Is Taiwan really on the top of the agenda for the Americans?
Taiwan dominates the global microchip market. That's a major thing that cannot be ignored. And also Taiwan is, although it's nowhere near a large military, it is, of course, like somewhere around number 20 economy in the world, and it also is a major trading partner of the U.S. So it's not a non-issue. But I think the main matter on the table here, of course, is the matter of Taiwan relates to the danger of a more major conflagration with China, and that's what America is really worried about, and that's why they would like to freeze frame the whole situation and have it go away. And of course, as has also been said, if America should end up looking like it abandoned Taiwan too egregiously, then that would damage America's standing in the world, and that, of course, is completely unacceptable to Washington.
I agree that the United States would be very reluctant to allow Taiwan to go down without a fight.
Oh, then let me clarify what I mean. Sorry, I understand where you're going with this, David, but that's not what I meant.
Gentlemen, it's evident that there's a lot of passion here around a very controversial topic, but we are unfortunately out of time. So once again, I'd like to thank our fantastic panelists, Tommy Steiner, David Goldman, and Dan Perry. Stay tuned. We'll have more on Global Eye in a bit.